Hi, I'm Mary Wickman, Becker County Master Gardener. We're here at the United Methodist Church Memorial Garden today, and we're going to talk about garden design. The first and most important thing is location, location, location. Where do you want your garden to be located? When do you want to see your garden? Is it something that you would like to see as you drive up to your house? Is it something you would like to see from your dining room windows? That should be thought out before you make your selection. For more enjoyment, it would be suggested that maybe you could view your garden from your porches or windows and so forth. So once you decide on the location, it's important to evaluate the soil. Before you plant, you're going to have to know what kind of soil you have there so you can help determine the type of plants. The ideal soil for a perennial bed would be a medium loam. It would be a fine, crumbly texture, and if it isn't the kind of soil that you have currently, it can be improved. How about light conditions? That should also be considered. How many hours a day is there going to be sun and shade on the location where you're thinking of having your garden? Again, that's going to determine the type of plants that you actually end up with. A shade-loving plant put in a hot, sunny spot is going to wilt and die. Same thing, a sun-loving plant put in a shaded area is going to become leggy and reach for the sunlight, and it's not going to produce very many flowers. Oftentimes when we first plant our garden, the sunlight is different than as this garden is 8 years later. So you need to consider how the plants are going to be years from now as well. How about the moisture content of the garden? Is it a wet site? Is it a moist site? Is it a dry site? Placing the proper plants for the moisture conditions available will contribute to the health and vigor of the plants. And what about the water source? How are you going to add water to the garden? All of that should be considered before you actually select your plants. Other considerations would be shape, size, and style. So what shape should the bed be? How large do you want your garden to be? How much time and effort do you want to put into it? Who's going to maintain the garden? What style? Is it going to be a formal straight line garden or a more informal with soft curves and flowing lines? Those are decisions that should be made again before you start in making your plant selection. The principles of design should be taken into consideration when you're designing your garden, and that would be simplicity, limiting the number of plants and shapes, a variety, creating some interest in the garden without and still keeping that simplicity. Balance. Keeping your garden from looking lopsided by balancing one side and the other. Emphasis. Momentarily stopping the eye to keep the bed interesting, whether that be a tree or a bench, a waterfall or a rock, bird bath, something like that. Sequence. How does the garden flow? How do the plants transition one to another? And scale, the actual size of the plants, starting with the larger plants in the back, smaller plants toward the border. How, keeping in mind the height and the width of the plants, how tall they are today, but how tall they're going to be years from now. Plants have three basic forms. They'd be spiky, mounded, and prostrate or flat. So how do you want them? And having at least one or two plants that bloom in different seasons would be a good idea so that you have spring, summer, and fall. Two other design considerations would be grouping your plants in odd numbers. Threes are more interesting than in twos. And then repeating your groupings throughout the garden as well. So I hope that I've given you some helpful hints for your garden, whether you're starting your garden from scratch or looking at your existing garden with fresh eyes. This is Mary Wickman, Master Gardener. Thank you.